Thank you. I'd like to recognize myself for 5 minutes, and continuing along that line of questioning, if there are members of y'all's staff that would enjoy coming up here and testifying, and we get to ask them the questions why they're not going forward on things, we'll be more than happy to do that. My first question, Mr. Shive, GSA got one of the 2 Bs out of the 24 CFO agencies, which were the 2 highest score. And one of the areas, now when we break it down and look at the data center consolidation, we grade you at a D, but if we did this on a curve, you're one of the better performing agencies on data center consolidation. Did you need additional monies in order to do that data center consolidation?
No.
You went from, the reported savings is $49 million, and y'all of the goal, and you've realized $29 million, which is 60% of that end goal. Did you need additional funding in order to achieve that?
No, we self-funded those activities. As a part of our IT consolidation, we consolidated much more than just data centers. We rationalized our applications, we rationalized our infrastructure, reorganized how we do business, and there were savings generated from that, and those savings were reinvested into data center consolidation.
And you were able to do that, you had the flexibility in order to do that. Is it because you have a unique budget authority as your role versus maybe some of your peers?
So no, I don't have a particularly unique budget authority. I operate largely out of the working capital fund, and that's what funded most of these activities. What enabled that was actually strong leadership at the top of GSA that made this a priority, and the fact that we got an early start on this.
Thank you. And now, Mr. McKinney, same question to you. The difference is y'all have only realized 1% of the savings of your goal. Why is that?
Well, the initial estimate that was provided, I think it was in the 2011-2012 timeframe, prior to my coming to DOT, I would have to characterize it as an overly optimistic stretch goal. The number that we reported subsequently to GAO, I think, reflects the true savings. I'll say this, that we have 15 core data centers, 3 of them non-FAA, 12 of them in FAA. I believe that we can get our 3 down to 2, a primary and a backup. FAA puts a data center in each one of their regions. The rest of our data centers are really telecommunication closets where there's a network router and a switch and maybe a file and print server for document caching. So our numbers, as far as the actual number of physical locations, is down pretty low. I think the other side of, that I would ask you to consider around data center consolidation is when we started this in 2011, we really didn't have mature cloud service providers that we could move our stuff to. So I think the key moving forward is not only do we shrink the number of data centers, is we move assets out of those data centers and up into the cloud. And I believe that we're going to be able to move.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
So
that's what we're going to do.
Now, do you have the authorities to do that?
Yes.
All right. And when do you plan to do it?
We're in the process of doing it right now. We just issued a contract.
When will it be completed?
How long will it take us to move it up? It'll take a few years.
A few years, and how much data are we talking about?
Well, let's see. I could give you an example. Probably by February, March timeframe, I'm going to move my entire messaging service up into the Microsoft 365
So
cloud.
are we talking
400 gigabytes of 400 terabytes of storage. We're going to make big moves, and we're going to also start moving just storage up there.
So is the length of time years to move data? Is it because of the volume of data? Is it because when you plan on implementing this, that seems like an incredibly long time in order to move even the petabytes and terabytes of data?
Well, I'd like to think, I just don't want to, I don't want to get in the be guilty of making an overly optimistic stretch goal. I think, yes, we can move fast. We are moving as fast as our technical teams are able to do it. And
so am I safe to assume that that may be one of these projects that are associated with your major investments that are not being delivered, deliverables every 6 months?
I think you're talking about incremental development.
Right.
Yeah, that's another subject. I'd be glad to get into that.
No, it is another subject, but aren't those about the major investments that y'all, would this data center consolidation not be considered a major investment?
Yes, it would.
Right, and so you have 59 projects associated with 19 major investments, and only 9 of those 59 projects are delivering deliverables every 6 months.
Right. Well, many of our major investments are on the FAA side of the house.
Fair.
They involve the national airspace. Incremental development, which is often referred to with the tagline, fail fast, is not really deemed appropriate for development of technologies that are going into the national airspace.
But also on the flip side of that, I would think if we would try to be getting the best technology available to make sure that our FAA and our men and women that are flying planes have the best technology at their fingertips. So talking in terms of years versus months is one of the things that has been concerning to us. When we have people come up here all the time talking about, I recognize the difficulty of the task, right? But the American people are tired of hearing it takes 2 years to do something that it would take any other entity less amount of time. And we can get into the details, and yes, that everybody has a unique challenge, but guess what? We still have to deliver. And one, I want to make sure you have the authorities to do that. But two, when you have those authorities, we're also going to hold you accountable on this area. Mr. Scott, in your written testimony, you talked about how many of the agency plans reflected a view that CIOs would not or did not have direct knowledge of IT goods and service acquisition. I recognize, your analysis of these initial agency plans, I think, has been one of the best insights we've gotten into this problem. How can we help you fix that?
I think there's probably a couple of things in the short run. One, as I mentioned, we have a number of these OMB guidelines coming out. I think the development of the appropriate scorecards and measure in that space will help us measure progress in that area, and continuing to insist that IT spend be identified as a part of major projects, and getting the visibility of that at all levels, whether it's at the sub-agency level or at the agency level, is super important. Another one to me is that as we plan and budget for things, that conversation that takes place among the senior leadership, the CXO, the program heads, and so on, that clearly identifies what the expectations are of IT in that particular case, is absolutely one of the keys. And so that's an area where we just can't take our eye off the ball. We've got to make sure we keep focused on it.
I consult with my colleagues, but that sounds like an area for a great hearing to discuss this topic and have some of those C-suite folks talking about why or why not CIOs are not involved in the procurement process. And the last question, and I've exceeded my time, I apologize to my colleagues, but this is for all of y'all. Welcome your feedback and thoughts on the scorecard. We sit here and get to ask you all tough questions, and I would look forward to, and Mr. Scott, start with you. Were you surprised, concerned with the scorecard?
Well, I think, again, I didn't have a lot of time to look at it, but to me, it's sort of one of the ways to look at it is it's a baseline of sort of where we are today, and I think the hope for FITARA is to seize this historic moment and frankly do things differently than we've done in the past. So To me, the real measure will be 6 months or a year from now, did we really move the needle on these things? I would love to change the past, can't do that, I haven't figured out any way, but you know, if we can really make progress in the next year or two, I think that's the real test. And hopefully the scorecard, you know, can reflect, you know, real-time progress as we go down the road. So as we work together, I'd like to figure out how we make sure we're getting more real-time visibility.
Mr. Bagawalia.
Mr. Hurd, I think, first of all, I think this legislation, we're excited because this legislation offers us the most promise since Klinger-Cohen to really allow us to do our jobs. In 30 years I've been in this business, I think this is the one that I think can help us because you're also providing the oversight to make sure it gets done. I like what my colleague, Mr. McKinney, said, that what gets measured gets done, and that's exactly what needs to happen. So I would just make two observations, and one would be that there's a little bit of definitional challenges as well, so we need time to process what the scorecards and things mean. But for example, on our portfolio stat, we did pretty well in some of the Agile, but we know we need to do much more than that across all programs, so that's an area we need to take a look at. And I think the other thing I'll just say is that as we go into acquisition, you know, there's going to be a partnership with other CXOs, so we got to really work together to make it happen. But I think this is a tremendous way to really get to the validation and verification framework.
Thank you, Mr. Shive.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd. I appreciate the work that our partners at GAO put into establishing a benchmark and a baseline for us to start to measure success as we move towards FITARA implementation. I think that this is a great opportunity to start that discussion so that we can begin the work of refining how we measure success, and I look forward to being a part of that discussion.
Mr. Powner, I think I know how you feel on this topic, but I want to say that in my 10 months being in Congress, I've been impressed with the professionalism of GAO and the thoroughness of y'all's reports. So I'm going to give the last word to Mr. McKinney.
Thank you, sir. As I said in my opening remarks, I am so grateful to this committee for FITARA, but both for the accountability and the authority. You know, I want it both. And I sense your urgency. I feel your urgency. I have that same sense of urgency. As I said, I think this is our last chance to get it right. So I'm going to take what you've said to me today, the accountability that I feel very clearly, and I take it back to work with me, because I've been telling my colleagues that FITARA is to be taken seriously, that the accountability is real, and we can debate about the authority, but at the end of the day, the scorecard is going to reflect our accountability, and I appreciate it very, very much.
Well, Mr. McKinney, you can tell your fellow CIOs and your agency heads that many of them will be asked to appear before us. And Mr. Scott, I agree with you. There should be movement. This is the baseline, and if we're not seeing movement, I think these conversations are going to grow a little bit more uncomfortable.